This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right, I'm calling to order this meeting of the City Council Ordinance Committee on January 20th, 2026 at 4:30 p.m. First on the agenda is public speak. For any members of the public that are here to speak to an item not on our agenda, now is your time to do so. I would ask that you get to 3 minutes if possible.
No question. So items not on the agenda, does that mean that if we have something to speak about regarding agenda items, we'll have an opportunity during that discussion?
Yes, we're opening public comments about the specifically today, we're talking about the general city ordinance amendments regarding short-term rentals.
Yeah.
So we're going to have an open discussion around that.
Okay, I want to check. Each committee does it differently, so I wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Anyone here for not agenda item speak? Okay. So we can move on to the approval of prior meeting minutes. I circulated the meeting minutes from December as well as the one last week with the other members of the committee. I hope that you had a chance to review them, and I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Go ahead.
So I move to approve 12/18/25 minutes and 1/14/26 meeting minutes.
All right, we have a motion. All right, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Roll call.
Yeah,
Tamara, your aye.
Aye.
And aye is for me. All right. Moving on to continuing business. The main thing that we have on the agenda tonight is the general city ordinance amendments regarding short-term rentals. The last that we left off on this discussion, we were waiting on the fire department on a determination regarding the wireless smoke systems as an alternative for the hardwired systems in lieu of sprinklers. I didn't know if we had an update from the fire department regarding that, so I wanted to invite the chief if you had any updates.
We do, in fact. So I'll let Dan speak. Dan's been working hard since the last Wednesday night. It's a short time working on this, but I think we made some good headway at least, and hopefully has some information that can help us think about some more things. So
yeah, so in general, the wireless can be used, but there is some limitation to it. So the thing that I found there was an issue is the heat detector. So the heat detector is only rated for 32 degrees and above. So you couldn't use that in an attached garage. So there had to be some type of alternative for that. Other than that, it has the NFPA, it has the UL approvals from what I can see and such. So it's something that could be used in lieu of the wired system, and it looks like it could probably be comparable. So other than that, that would have to be addressed with an attached garage or any other place that would require some type of heat detection and stuff. So
okay. Well, thank you for your due diligence on that and for bringing that to this group. I guess I will open it up to comments from other counselors.
So in your professional opinion, what would an alternative to heat detection in an attached garage, what might that entail?
Well, there is no alternative to that. But so as Dan was saying, there was we established that an alarm system, a residential alarm system, can be used in lieu of a hardwired smoke detection system. Such systems can cost significantly less than a hardwired smoke detection system. If you have a home or a short-term rental in this case that has an attached garage, the garage has to have a heat detector in it. The reason is that heat detectors, smoke detector would be inappropriate for a garage, and they also cannot withstand temperatures that are below freezing, but they're required if they're attached to a dwelling. So one alternative, if you have an alarm system, and you have a place that has an attached garage, you could, put a heat detector in the garage. It's hardwired. And it has a sounding device. It would have to go, extend a device that's UL listed. It has to be an approved sounding or an alarm device inside the dwelling. So if something's going on in the garage, shuts that detector off, it will notify people in the house or the dwelling. And that would be separate from the alarm system, because apparently are no heat detectors for these alarm systems that would work. There may be, and it could bear some looking into, I believe in this day and age, there has to be some technology that would assist this, helping the transition. In other words, translate this signal from the heat detector into something that would be readable by the alarm system and therefore activate the entire alarm system in that case. Right? But in the absence of that, the decibel level of the alarm connected to the heat detector is, the approved one is loud enough to be heard throughout, a moderate dwelling. Yeah. So, and at least notify people to get out. Or something's going on in the garage, that they need to look into.
And do want to stress the importance too with this, especially with this wireless system. Again, it has to be monitored, and for several reasons, not only for early notification for fire and carbon monoxide detection and such, but because they're battery operated devices throughout the dwelling, right? Those need to be monitored. So if they're tampered with, if the batteries go low and such, that a signal is sent. So the owner is notified and what have you. So that's really important as far as that goes. I just wanted to kind of stress that and stuff. And it's kind of a good thing that the heat detector isn't allowed in the garage, because as we all know with batteries, the cold zaps it. So that person would be going to maintain this battery operated device in a cold environment, which would be challenging in itself.
Sure. So do you have any more comments? I see Mindy has her hand.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure that we don't have to have a sprinkler system in an attached garage if that's not just, right. So I'm being facetious, obviously, but.
Well, there actually are.
I'm sure there are.
Sprinklers are required.
I'm sure there are.
It's way out of the ordinary.
Also, it's really cold that might freeze them, right? So there's that.
Mindy?
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Yes.
did you say 32, they can't be used in a space under 32 degrees?
32 degrees.
But it could be used in a house if that needed.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as it's above 32 degrees. Yeah. It seems to be the manufacturer specs of 32 degrees on all the devices from what I got from the information. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for looking into it.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for providing it. Yes.
Yeah, that was great.
I just had a quick question.
Can you just provide your name?
My name's John Lucido. Just had a thought on the way here in regards to this, since we're starting right off with this, and this seems in the direction we're going. And this is a little more detailed in regards to the whole thing, the big picture of the whole thing. So are these going to be required for a person who just rents out like one bedroom? So this person's going to have to get one smoke heat, low voltage combo unit in this one bedroom with a main panel and a cell.
They'd have to update the whole house. Yeah. To the current standard. Yeah.
Oh, so if they're short-term renting their bedroom only, they're going to have to do their whole house.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And now you have this alternative that's wireless, that's more affordable. So we've been trying to work with you folks on this. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so these are actually UL listed.
Yes. Yeah. I looked into it. Yeah. The UL listed, they follow the same UL standards as some of the other system type. Yeah. So, yeah.
Any other questions? I think,
So I have questions about the fire alarm carbon monoxide system. I know that there had been debate and I was watching some earlier meetings about whether they would be monitored by a company or not. And I wasn't sure where that had landed. It looked like it was going to not happen. So I wasn't sure what the status of that was.
yeah, so I'm sure that other people could speak to this more. It's my understanding that the monitored aspect of it is part of what helps it get to that exceed the safety threshold that, you know, when we have a short-term rental, we're talking about what's considered quote unquote transient lodging, which has different requirements for fire safety because the population is not, you know, in the community is not, you know, as familiar with the space. So we have, you know, additional requirements, and I'm sure you could speak to that more eloquently. But
Just real quick, so in speaking to the gentleman from ADP, with the wireless, correct me if I'm wrong, it goes right to the fire department. That was my
It
understanding.
goes to a central station. It
Okay,
goes to a central station monitoring company,
okay,
and they would call us.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so that was different than what he said, so I just want to make sure that was clear.
yeah.
So there is monitoring and it's not just.
We would require
Internal.
that. It has to be monitored. The system has to be monitored.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I was
Yeah,
concerned about.
absolutely.
I was worried that there's
Yeah.
a huge safety.
No, especially with, like I said, with the battery operated
Mhm.
alarms and stuff, because we want to make sure those are. Yeah.
did you have any other questions or? Camera or Councilor Smith, did you have any other questions?
I just want to make sure that I got the comment. I can't quite see details, but it sounded like Kathy, about the question about is this going to be monitored and who is going to be keeping the monitor? I just want to make sure I'm getting that right for the notes.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to just repeat what your question was?
Yeah, I was just asking if it was going to be a monitored system or whether it was just going to be internal to the house. And it sounds like it's going to be a monitored system, which is good. I think the safety of the individuals visiting our city are really important.
Okay. Thanks. I just want to make sure I got that.
And that would be one aspect of the annual inspection would be to
Mhm.
ensure that they are keeping up the monitored system and stuff. So that'd be part of the inspection.
Oh, I do have one question.
Sure.
I'm just imagining if I was a resident listening to this and wanted to take steps next. Is there more than one company that could be hired to do this in our city, or is it like cable where it's only one option? If you wanted to do the wireless.
There's several. I'm sure there's probably multiple companies, yeah, that would offer that. Yeah, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, Mindy, you said you spoke to Hackworth Communication.
For wired in, I spoke to Hackworth. I did call a company in South Hadley who never got back to me after weeks and weeks. And then for wireless, I only talked to ADT. I didn't talk to anybody else, but I would imagine there's somebody else.
I can provide a list.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to make sure that if there is a, like, I'm Roxanne Mariani, I'm from on Maple Street. I have a question about, in terms of the wireless system, which I'm glad that's going to work out. There are other ones, but I want to know, like, so if we give you a list, will you like discern which ones you approve and which you don't approve? How do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, like Mindy had provided with ADT, we
ADT.
just need the specification sheet because they got to make sure it meets NFPA and be well
Okay.
and such. So yeah, as long as we did that,
I
I
mean,
guess
we at least have
eventually,
one, so we know that. But
Yeah.
Any other one?
and I guess eventually going through this, we would have a list and we would try to determine like
Right.
the ones they're approved, right, and stuff. So eventually you just look at the list.
Okay, yeah, I know that's
thing.
right.
So
I think that it would go in the other direction. You would provide the credentials with the company who's installing it, and then they would install something that meets the spec.
correct.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah, I thought the question had to do with how many, with what companies would be recommended. I mean,
I think that was the
that's not it.
No,
Yeah.
no.
No, we couldn't do that.
No, I think. yeah,
Approved, I wouldn't say
approved.
recommended, but
It would
which
have-
ones would be?
It would have
approved?
approved devices.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we'd have to, yeah, so you would have to provide that, like.
Right.
so-
If the devices are UL and
NFPA,
NFPA,
yeah.
and if they have a central, monitoring system, like that then would respond to, would send it directly to you guys?
Yeah, and that would be part of the NFPA and UL type
Gotcha,
listing and such. so,
gotcha. Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Captain Dan, when I was talking to Joe from ADT, so you know, how I was saying that we have our alarms, but they would just put them right next to where our alarms are. But they don't do it to code, right? You guys go and check the other battery system to code if there's a battery or wired in or whatever. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, so
Yeah. how does that
in
work?
talking with the gentleman from ADT, from Joe, I guess 15 years ago, so ADT used to come in and pretty much take everything down and put their system in, and it would be up to the code and stuff. They don't do that anymore. They just, for whatever reason, as a company, they decided not to do that. So what they do is they leave what's in place there, what's kind of the code for that building at the time it was built. They'll leave that in place, and they'll add, so if you have a cape, they might add one on each level of their product and stuff as aside from what's there to have a monitor type of smoke and CO system. But we would look, they would have to, if in this particular situation, we would require them, whatever the system would be, is to install it up to the current code. So you'd have to put it in the bedrooms and such. And if you had an attached garage, we'd have to figure that out too, and stuff. Does that?
So that's why they would just, like, my house already needs code. So that's why they were gonna just put them right next to the ones.
They would just put, yeah, because that's their company policy, because they don't now take the other ones down
Yeah.
and replace to the code. They just kind of it's additional ones. Just like if you have an older house that has battery operated,
Yeah.
you don't need them in the bedrooms, but if you want to put battery operated in the bedrooms, you can do that. Actually, yeah. So, yeah, that would make sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, I think that's a good segue to, I think, the next point of moving forward with the actual policy here was maybe you can clarify, but my understanding was that we were going to decide whether or not some of these requirements are communicated through an info sheet from the fire department versus actually in the regulation, right?
Yeah, so there were I do have another
Oh, yeah.
question. Actually, if we could do that first, but I just want to make sure all the sprinkler stuff is handled. Okay, we good with that? So,
Things are,
I think,
I'm sorry.
maybe Jim,
Huh?
ask Dave. Yeah, go ahead with that. Go ahead.
Oh, I just missed what she said.
oh, no, I was just wanted to make sure the conversation about not sprinkler, sorry, the wireless.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, it's,
Sounds like it, right?
yeah. So I just want to make sure that that's taken care of. So we had a conversation last time about it being transferable. And there just seemed to be a bit of confusion regarding that. And again, this was 4-50.3 C, registration of short-term rentals shall not be transferable. I was, and then we started talking about having it be allowed in trusts or having it be allowed in LLCs. When I was speaking to the health director last meeting, after the meeting, he had made the comment of the registration goes with the house. And that just felt like that whole conversation got a bit farther away from where we had started, I think. So I think that we need to decide whether or not this is transferable or not, because if it's in a trust, to my understanding, if it's in a trust, that means it's inheritable. If it's an LLC, I can add people to those, et cetera. So I think it's important for us to get a little bit of clarification on that because it started to feel really confusing to me where if it's attached to a house and I sell my house, then that person now has a short-term rental attached to their house. So that just felt very confusing.
Yeah, I can speak to the part about it being attached to house. So the short-term rental is attached to a person. So like, for example, if you sign up on a platform and you are paying your taxes through mass tax, and then it's paid through you, and if it's an LLC, that's through you, but it's not attached to the address. So like, for example, if a person has a short-term rental in a house and then they sell that house, that listing no longer exists. They would move away and that listing doesn't exist on the platform anymore.
No, I understand that. I'm talking about within the city that it felt like the registration now it went along with the house, right? And so I think we just need to be clear about what we're saying. So I know there's some folks who have family, who I think was part of the conversation about the being in trust or LLC, et cetera, because this is new. It just feels to me that the cleanest thing that we do is if it is in your name and you're doing something with your daughter or your son or your husband or whatever, that as we start this new process, you just include both of those names on the registration at the outset. That just feels like the cleanest thing for us to be able to do. And it's just not transferable otherwise.
So I guess my confusion with that is in our definition section of the ordinance, we define an owner as any person who alone or severally with others has legal or equitable title or beneficial interest in any dwelling unit. Trustee or person, a person or an owner can be a single person, a marital unit, a group of people, LLC, or a trust. So I think that there defines an application could belong to a trust or an LLC, which could be, like you said, inheritable or transferable in another way. So I think 4-50.3 makes it pretty clear that it's not transferable, but I think the definition section sort of gives a little bit of a loophole to that. So that might be where I don't know. You might know better.
Yeah, I guess I just want a little bit of clarification because it just felt like it started to get a little bit murky when we started talking about it's now attached to a house. And if you sell that house, so I'm just trying to understand all of the various kind of.
I think it's both, right? It's attached to the owner and the property. So you can't transfer. So one owner could own multiple properties, but they can't transfer their registration from one to another. So it's both. It covers both. It runs with the person and the property. And if it should either change, then you need a new registration.
Okay, I just want to be clear if that just felt confusing.
Is that Brian? Does that jive with what you?
Somewhat. I guess my only question is, if my mother owns a house and she rents it as short-term rental, and then we put that house in a trust to make it easier moving forward, would the short-term rental still apply if the ownership of the house changed from my mother's name to a trust name?
If your mother was associated with the trust, I feel like that's enough.
Okay.
To show continuity of ownership. I mean, that's my opinion.
Okay, yeah, great. So it was just because we were talking about sale of house, et cetera, and so it followed that sale of the house, and so that's what I just wanted to be clear about that. Awesome, thanks.
So I guess what I was saying before about how we move forward with the actual language in front of us, I guess I would defer to you about where that, like what our options are that were presented to us before we got into the debate about the wireless systems.
Right, so we had talked about, and I have to go go back and remember where it was. So we had included the clause about, for the alternative being included in here. I know we had gone through and we had eliminated all of the code language. To simplify it because it was very confusing. And so I can't remember where that part was now. We had talked about
Page 6.
Page
Change that I think it's fine. I do things. Yeah.
Yeah.
4-50.5.
Dash 5 right there. Oh, so it's in here.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that the discussion that has been had is that the should be monitored. So there should be an installed whole house smoke alarm system. So the discussion that was had was this particular section is wanted to be included in the document itself. So right now it's pulled out.
Okay.
So I think that's what we have to do. And I think with that, we're going to have a conversation with the solicitor to make sure that that is not in any way a conflict regarding liability or anything of that particular nature, to make sure that that is because it is an alternative, which my understanding legally, the building commissioner has the ability to institute that. So we just need to make sure that that alternative is okay to be in the ordinance. And so I think that's a thing that we have to figure out. And I would just feel more comfortable asking the solicitor to make sure that that's possible.
And it feels like a lot of the uncertainty of what it means to have it in or not has been there. So, you know, if we go to come back next meeting, that should be somewhat easy.
I think so. I think the rest of it a lot of it has already been reviewed. Most of it is reviewed. I think we just went through and removed all the code language. So it just created some confusion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that an accurate statement? Okay, so one of the conversations that we had was that you wanted the language around the alternative to be in the body of the ordinance.
So, yes.
Yes, okay,
So, and just so you're aware, you know, after other meetings, we learned last week that there's still a lot of ruminating at the state level, I should say, but that's kind of coming out in a lot of conflicted ways. I mean, there's some towns are, as you're aware, I believe, are on inspections are denying a registration or a permit if they don't have sprinklers, because the building code currently says, I mean, what it says now, and that's what people who are doing these inspections are operating from, is that any building or portion thereof used as a short-term rental requires the installation of a 13D sprinkler system. Well, we've already covered this before. That's kind of unpopular with not just property owners, but some inspectors as well. So hence the state kind of scrambling to come to terms with my understanding, something that will satisfy everybody. So one of the things that I'm aware of that has been mentioned is a residential monitored fire alarm system. So on that basis, I would accept that as the alternative, science alternative to sprinklers. And that's why, and what I was hearing from the last few meetings is that people are looking for some level of certainty, and even from the extreme of, we don't want to do something that we might not in the future have to have done, or the other end of it, we don't want to put something in the ordinance, and then find out that we didn't have to do it. Or if you don't do it, if there's nothing in the ordinance, then I'll be, when I do inspections, or it would be, building code says, if it hadn't changed, it says it requires sprinklers, and I would be doing what's happening in Lennox and Lee, issuing letters of denial to the operators, and they would have to appeal that order or decision. So my thinking is that the level of safety provided by a monitor alarm system, though it's not wet, it's totally different from a sprinkler system. I believe, it's my view, that it actually exceeds in many ways what a sprinkler system would do. The fact that it's monitored and there's notification to first responders. And if it's not working, monitoring company knows that it's not working, and they will let the property owner know. So a lot of more benefits, I saw.
Yeah, thank you for that. I guess my recollection from last meeting was there was a little bit of confusion, because definitely from the fire chief's perspective, my understanding was we really want something in the code that clarifies and sets a consistent standard for, if potentially we have a new building commissioner coming in. But there was also confusion about this new potential stuff coming down the pipe from the state. And Chief, you had mentioned there potentially being an alternative language that we could use that's a little bit more deferential to the state. Am I remembering correctly?
I don't remember that, but the other thing I'll just add on to your point is it would also provide consistency. So when we actually go in there and do the inspection, right now, if we don't have it outlined in the ordinance, we could have 50 different alternatives out there in the community. So now when Captain Dan or whoever goes out and does the inspections, how do they know what to look for in each of these? Because there's no consistency out there. So do you fail them? Do you pass them? What are they supposed to have, just extinguishers, smoke detector, sprinkler? So that's another value that would come out of having it, to your point, in the ordinance.
Okay.
So, 50.5, just had a couple thoughts, questions all the way down, just above D. Roman numeral 8. I had put in the Easthampton Fire Department shall be responsible for the enforcement of all provisions in 4-50.5, section C. There's a comment here to be included in a separate fire department policy document with registration requirements. So in order to enforce the fire code, there has to be a path to enforce the fire code. So there has to be something for me to be able to do that. With the committee kind of gutting what I had put in there for under C, as far as short-term rentals go that are going to be owner occupied, that are free in nature, the fire department has really no jurisdiction. They're 1- and 2-family homes. And stuff. We have no jurisdiction, or at least what my research has come up with. So the reasons for putting in this is kind of alluding to, again, what the chief said, is to be able to have some direction and some clarity on exactly where, where we're enforcing. So for instance, some of the stuff that I put in there for, the fire extinguisher referencing the code, because the code already has it laid out for fire extinguishers and distances and all that. And so not to go into that, it allows a path for the fire official to tell the folks what they need under the state fire code regulations. So, that's one example of why we need some of that language. And again, it wasn't to confuse people about putting in about Mass General Law, 26H, was to just make them aware of it, because when they go to do a short-term rental, they're going to be reading this and they're going to see it and they're going to ask what that is. And then they're going to understand, oh goodness, I can't go above 6 people because I'm going to have to sprinkle the building, period. So that was just so they didn't get any curves, so they knew exactly what was coming. So, I think it's important if we're going to have some items in here that are fire related, fire alarm related, that we have some type of provision in there that the fire department code official will be able to, through the ordinance, enforce the ordinance and such. So does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's a
code path. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think, and this is my understanding, I'm going to open up discussion with the other counselors, but this is my understanding of where we are in this process, is that we're on the same page regarding the alternative compliance and the wireless detectors meeting the requirements and that being a good option that's more affordable for people. That seems acceptable. Seems like we can move forward with that. Sounds like a lot of your concerns and a lot of the concerns that are still in the air are around the specific language of this. And that's something that I think that we can hash out maybe one-on-one with a city solicitor, just to get that put together for the next meeting to get this approved. And we don't have to do that as quickly. So we can have some time to make sure we have the meeting and get the language right without changing any of the critical content. Does that sound to you? Does that sound right? And then I'll open up to the other counselors.
No, that sounds great. And I just asked, please, too, because from the last meeting to this one, I only had 2 business days because of the holidays and stuff. And I work a 4-day work week, 40-hour work, so just need some more time, please.
Sure. I totally understand. I'm doing all of this outside of my work. Yes, so I understand.
And I say something else, because you mentioned it, Chaim, about future building commissioner asking for something greater. Should that be the case? I have zero control over that. Nobody knows that. I don't know. That's all.
You could in essence have this language with the alarm, and correct me if I'm wrong, and another building commissioner is not going to accept that.
Well, they could come in and say, well, but the ordinance, I think the issue is that I was understanding from people who had this concern before a couple meetings ago. I think it was when it was in front of the council, the full council, the concern was, so if we do this, and then building commissioner comes in who says, well, no, the code says sprinklers. The ordinance still says monitored fire alarm system. And my thinking is that, again, knowing a lot of the building inspectors and where they are, at least a good number of them, where they are on this issue, it would be not impossible that another building commissioner could come in and say, well, the code says sprinklers, and that's what I'm going to demand. But I think it's unlikely. So,
yeah, and with, if this goes forward with the history of it being, accepted in the city and such, that they would probably have a good case if they had to appeal it or something like that too. So.
Yeah, and luckily we have a built-in review period in here. So if that conflict comes up, we, have the authority to really rectify it quickly. So I guess I'll open this session up with the other counselors. Did you have anything, Counselor Dunn?
No, I think, again, just the reason why it was pulled out was just because we kept going back and forth in this particular space of the distinguish between the building code and the fire code. And so it was just adding a lot of confusion. And literally every meeting we were talking about, trying to get clarification about those things. And so to simplify it, you know, we included that was already there, but, that they had to follow just Massachusetts building code, right? And then if they want to do that, then they would just communicate with your various departments, right? So that was the intent. If the rest of the committee wants to have that back in, that's, I think, for a discussion to happen, but that's why it was pulled up, because it was just adding too much confusion to the conversation.
Sorry, it's taking me a second to get set up. And there was conversation at the public hearing with the city council too about concerns about having too many code references. So I just want to include that too.
Yeah.
I think part of it is just not an understanding, right? We live and breathe this stuff, so.
Sure.
So we understand it, we understand like the importance of having the language, I guess, so. You're just trying to maybe work on that.
Yeah, and we can do something like maybe
Right.
footnotes or something that makes it a little bit easier to read. And yeah, but I definitely think your concerns about enforceability and referencing things very explicitly makes sense, and that's separate from the code references and clarity.
Yeah, and I think one other thing too. I think not to put this on you all. I think there's still a lot of confusion about the codes, right? And I think that people are still not understand. And I'm making this assumption because people are still inquiring about the 250-day cap. Like, if we move forward with this, unless you have sprinklers, you cannot have a short-term rental more than half the year.
That would be true.
Minus 1 day, right?
That's because the use changes. I started working on this. I spent hours and hours. I was going to give you something to look at to help kind of clear that up. But what I did do is look at other towns and their caps and the reasons for the caps. And something I wonder if it's known, where did the 250-day cap come from? Why 250 specifically? And I'll just say other towns adopted caps because they wanted to dissuade people buying homes and for the purpose of short-term renting. So, and they also, using the same intent and purpose at the beginning of their code, and I have a couple of those here, are saying to preserve at least somewhat the integrity of neighborhoods and the enjoyment of people's homes in those neighborhoods. So trying to find a balance, it's all about a balance. Well, so if you want to find a true balance, well then half a year, this kind of right in the middle, it also solves a lot of problems for people who have whole houses not owner occupied. So it makes a big difference when a place is owner occupied, then the use as a short-term rental becomes an accessory use because it's also their dwelling. So it's an accessory use. A place that where the principal use is transient lodging, it changes the use classification in the building code, and the building code requires, again, and I don't mean to offend anybody, it's just the way the code is written. It puts non-owner occupied transient lodging facilities in the same category as hotels, motels, and they're not even on our use table. They're only allowed in commercial districts. Whereas if you make it a accessory use, by limiting the number of days to just 1 day less than half a year, or even 50, just half the year, it solves a lot of problems in my mind. The use thing is not a problem anymore. As I mentioned before, there are 2 cases settled in Massachusetts that hinged exactly on that point, to claim that a single-family home was an accessory use of that home, but because those homes were used, in both cases, more than half a year, the judges said, no, that's not true. An accessory use is subordinate to the principal use in every way. So we could get away from sprinklers entirely, perhaps, in Easthampton if some of these homes that are all year round were not so. The other thing has to do with the use table, which I don't really want to push that hard, but it just makes the whole house use non-owner occupied in a neighborhood very unique in that now the principal use is the short-term rental transient lodging in the middle of a neighborhood because it's not owner occupied. We could eliminate the cap on days entirely if it's owner occupied homes. So there's no limitation on 365 days a year for owner occupied. But why 250 for non-owner occupied? I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, again, I think it was just, we were trying to dissuade, right?
Yeah.
People were, purchasing homes for the purpose of that, et cetera. So I think that was the initial goal. I think that we looked at some towns that was half the year. We looked at some that were 300 or 300 plus days, and we were trying to think about what was fair within the context of what Easthampton is. And so I think that's how that number was arrived to. But again, point of conversation is I think that people are still going to need some support and in terms of understanding. And so I think it's just a matter of kind of being patient as people try to figure these things out. Because I think there's just some people who, the words I'm looking for, I think are operating in a particular way that it's going to be a shift for them. And so just to help them kind of with that shift.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel similarly that I feel like it's more of a communications problem than anything else. Like we have overlapping jurisdictions of what we can regulate with city ordinance and zoning ordinance, and then all of that on top of the state building code, and fire code, and there's only so much that we can solve with that. And like, I don't love the idea of using our ordinance to communicate something that isn't explicit in the ordinance. Like, I don't love the idea of just setting it to half the year just because there's another law that does that already. Like, to me, that seems like creating redundancy. Not to say that I don't, hear your point about it being a commercial use and all of that and being unusual in residential areas, which I think is a little bit separate of the communication challenge. So it was my understanding that as part of this, there was going to be some sort of communication about policy, about the info of this policy from the enforcement departments, right?
What we talked about was, again, it's coming to you, like a one pager, right? I think of kind of on your end, kind of what is required or what expectations. But then I think there were some additional pieces in terms of what's expected or required in terms of first aid kits or et cetera. And so those were some additional items that we had kind of talked about that upon wanting to register, that information would then be provided to them, right? But I think that's obviously that's a next step, really. Basically.
I had a question of the commissioner. So, sorry. So, if the use is going to change from the R3 to an R1, so non-owner occupied, is that going to require a Chapter 34 code review for that potentially?
It depends. It really depends on the size of the house. That's a good question.
To bring up
any change of use in the building code, a change of use requires a Chapter 34 review of the building. If any changes, I have done this many times. More recently with 1 Northampton Street, for instance, that required a Chapter 34. Full-blown Chapter 34 is quite expensive, but because they're just using the first floor and they just needed to increase the ventilation and everything, I did kind of an abbreviated approach. It saved a lot of money. But same thing would apply to, however, short-term rentals. You have a house that's an R3 in the building code because it's primarily non-transient, owner-occupied or non-owner occupied. So it's R2 or R3. You go to R1, that's a change of use. So it's a whole different category for consideration. So yeah, it could require that.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm picturing, a short-term rental operator and sort of a decision tree. Like, do you plan on being an owner-occupied host? If yes, like, these are the things that you have to worry about. If no, another decision.
Yeah.
Are you going to be renting for more than half the year or not? If so, here are the regulations that you need to follow. If not, like, I just feel like this is after, I was saying before, I watched the December meeting and the last meeting twice, both of them, so I could do all these notes, and listening to explain it over and over again, I feel like I finally got it. And I really don't think that it's impossible thing to communicate. And as someone who communicates things for a living, like I don't think that it's a problem that we can't solve together in that way.
Great. No, I appreciate that. Nice.
Mindy?
Can you speak, what is the chapter 36 full blown?
Sure, chapter 34, in the building code, if a building, an existing building, we're just talking about existing buildings, experiences a change of use, then there has to be a review done by a design professional of the entire structure, it involves floor plans, use. For instance, a radical change would be from an office space to a factory, right? So you have to look at what's required by way of means of egress for a factory as opposed to a business. What's required by, I'm sorry.
We're just talking about houses.
I know, I'm just trying to explain the concept. You asked me, I'm trying to explain. So when a place changes use, it goes to, in this case, the use is changing to a higher risk classification. So you have to look at it for instance, why does not an R3, a 1 or 2 family, require sprinklers? Why does an R1 require sprinklers? And the answer to that is because it's directly related to transient, non-transient use. An R1 is transient use.
Well, and if I could just interrupt you, could you give like an example of the kind of things that you would be looking for in one of these inspections in a residential home, like in one of these potential buildings that we're talking about?
Okay, so a common owner-occupied short-term rental, an inspection would include, and this is part of the code, it says an inspection for, it's a reference code. We didn't adopt it in Massachusetts, building maintenance code. It's a reference code. So now in the code about short-term rentals, it talks about, it references the building maintenance code. So general inspection, you go in, what are the stairs like going in? Going in the door, are they stable? Is there a handrail where there's one required? Are they in good shape? It's a health department does a very similar thing. There's a lot of overlap in that kind of inspection. Dr. Ryan, I think they check window latches and things. I don't do that. There's a latch. But anyway, it's general maintenance of the building. Is it safe? Is it fit for human habitation? Is it safe for human habitation? What can go wrong? And so the standard is pretty normal, really. It's easy. What's the maintenance level? Are things there that need to be there? Stairs going down to the basement. Is there a handrail on the wall? I go into a lot of places, no handrail. They're required. So on an inspection, if there's not one there, I would say you need to put a handrail on the wall going down to the basement.
Thank you. That answers my question more than, it sounds like I didn't ask it correctly when we were talking about warehouses and stuff. That's the question I was trying to ask.
So just a follow-up question based on your answer. Based on what I'm hearing from you, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in this assumption, but it sounds like this would be really easy just like slot into the process that we're already sort of imagining here with the application. That would be your inspection would entail all of these things. So it's essentially like we we sort of understand that you will have your things that you need to inspect in any one of these homes, and the specific codes that you're following may vary depending on the circumstance of owner occupied, not owner occupied,
Correct.
more than, okay.
Correct.
Is that something that it would make sense to make explicit in the application process so you can prepare ahead of time?
Absolutely. I like what you said earlier, the kind of flow chart idea, owner occupied, non-owner occupied, big difference. How many rooms? Is the whole house available except for, all of those kind of things.
Okay.
Very important.
Great. No, I'm just trying to make sure that there aren't any obstacles in terms of us moving forward with this. But
Yeah, and again, when we had talked about this before, I think it's how to make this transition as easy as possible for people who are looking to register, right? So I think that's what we're trying to do. And it's clear from previous conversations that people were still really struggling, right? After 9 months of having this conversation, right? And so, and it's one, I mean, you obviously know them like the back of your hand, right? But I think for a lot of people who are trying to figure these things out, right, the more information that we can provide them, the easier it's going to be for them to, one, get through the process successfully, hopefully.
yeah.
And again, just to,
Yeah, sure.
just a reminder, like the commissioner said before, welcome to call, any of these folks, welcome to call and schedule an inspection.
Anytime.
So give them a heads up of, kind of what we're looking for outside of anything that's going to be accepted, whatever, but on the ordinance, but just, throw that out there. I think that's very proactive if folks do that,
So they can make a real list.
Yeah, so
What they need to do.
conceptualize
Yeah.
exactly what, right, and be prepared for when this comes down to the ordinance.
Okay. And I mean, and again, this is just me putting this out there, and it sounds like the discussions we already had opens up that opportunity. Like, it sounds like we're clear that what the requirements are going to be, and that if a short-term rental operator wanted to call you tomorrow, you would have a good idea about saying, once this application is available, it's looking good. That, I just want to make sure that as we're entering into this stage where we might have to put off for another month, that's my thought, is that we're gonna meet, maybe us three behind the scenes and with the city solicitor to just iron out this section, the page 5, the 0.5B or whatever, and then revisit it, post it publicly for like maybe the second half of February. We could approve it then, and then, it would maybe go into effect in June or whatever I just want to make sure that the hosts have an opportunity to start that process now, or as soon as possible. But I want to give the opportunity for other counselors. Counselor Smith.
The first thing I just really heard last time, I think it was Mindy that said she has a lot of people who rent very specifically for Smith College graduation. So I don't know if it's possible to move the timeline to May rather than June for that reason, or if that would even be on the table at this point. So hopefully, Mindy, can you give me more specific information about that?
Well, and before she does, I think regardless of what we do, the moratorium would likely remain in place until it became.
Right, so that's what I was trying to say last time. I think we need to talk to the mayor, because I think he's willing to extend the moratorium until we can get to a place of.
When is it currently end?
I had talked to him about February, but I don't know what it is right now. So I talked to him about February, but I don't know if he has done that, right? Because there's been a lot of transition since that conversation. I think in December I had that with him.
All right. Well, I'm meeting with him tomorrow morning, so I will bring that up then. But yeah, I guess. Sorry, Mindy, if you want to answer a question.
I'm not sure, Tamara, what you were asking me about, but the last meeting, I think I was asking so I have a house that's only a short-term rental. And we generally open up time for booking a certain amount of months ahead. So we didn't know how far we can open now because we didn't know when licensing is going to happen or registration is going to happen. But had somebody a year ago ask me about this coming Smith College weekend.
Same.
And I just said, I have no idea. Like, this whole thing is going on. We don't even know if we're gonna be doing it, basically. So I was just looking for a timeline that might be safe to open a calendar.
Okay, I can certainly understand and appreciate that. I thought you literally had people that you were having to turn away because of this, and this was like that there's something missing in the communication if that was the case. So I'm
I mean,
glad.
in a sense, we have turned a lot of people away at this point because I don't know what's gonna happen. I didn't even know we could have a wireless system until like now. So this is super helpful because then we can make decisions going forward.
So you're afraid you're gonna have to close for construction?
No,
of
that's
the
not what I'm
place,
saying.
And you can't have people during that
No,
time?
that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying my situation is different from your situation. And I was just trying to figure out what we are gonna do. That's it, based on what the committee is gonna do, based on what the fire department's gonna allow, based on what the building commissioner is gonna require, and the Board of Health. It's a lot of moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
I wanna have to cancel on people that wanted to come for Smith College weekend and then I call them up and go, sorry, we can't do it. That would not be great.
Right. And so again, I think that was the thinking with this mayor and the original mayor of, because there's going to be such a new process and with a cap of 50, people trying to move through as quickly as possible, if the moratorium was extended to help people get through that period of time of registering, but also, getting through inspections and things of that nature, right? I think that was the original intent from those conversations of extending that to give some flexibility to that in understanding. I'm not saying that I understand why there's a moratorium. I'm just saying it was to be intended to help people get through that period of time. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we follow up with the mayor to make sure that's extended.
Okay.
Mhm.
I just want to be clear on when you say the moratorium, what that means, because the moratorium, the language in the moratorium explicitly states that this has nothing to do with building safety, fire safety, health, and none of these things. It was the moratorium on enforcement against the presence of a short-term rental because they were not allowed on the use table. So when we're talking about extending the moratorium, is the thinking that the moratorium then prevents any kind of action on the part of the health department, fire department, or myself in addressing what might be unsafe situations or situations which we have no idea because we've not been in them at all?
I mean, that was my understanding, but only because I don't understand what is stopping the health department, fire department from enforcing things now.
Exactly, right. Yeah,
And if it's not that moratorium, what is
it? It has to do with job security, frankly, on my part, because I'm at will.
Noted.
So if I don't do what I'm being asked to not do, if it's not even that way, why? I'm in fear of just pushing that matter right now because it would get a lot of people upset and then I could lose my job.
Is the same
even though that's
true for the fire department? Would you say?
Don't know. I'm just speaking for myself.
So with the fire department.
I know you can't speak for the whole department, but
No. For the code enforcement, again, for the code enforcement side, I don't have a pathway right now to enforce any short-term rental.
Okay.
Fire code 527 in CMR, which is the Mass Comprehensive Fire Code.
And that's until we establish an inspection.
Yes, because specifically in Chapter 10, 1 and 2 family dwellings are exempt.
Okay.
Because, you can't go into somebody's home, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
so what I'm understanding is that the delay is not essentially until this goes into effect, it's still the Wild West, is what I'm understanding. So is that
But I think inspections would be useful to prevent kind of a log jam.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that as soon as we set this timeline in motion, it behooves everyone involved to start getting in contact with you guys and really getting their ducks in a row. And we, of course, we are setting aside right of first refusal to people who are already, so we want to encourage those people to do that. But I guess that sort of addresses my concern with the timeline, because if the moratorium really doesn't have any bearing on these expensive things that we're talking about that are really going to shift and have the impact on operators.
Yeah, and again, it was just what the current mayor and the previous mayor had said that they intended to do. So I'm just trying to communicate what their intent was to be, to give additional time for people to work through that, but it makes total sense.
Yeah. No, I'm just trying to understand fully.
Yeah. So
I'm new to this process. So.
Absolutely.
Tamara, or Councilor Schmidt, did you have any other additional questions?
Yep. So if someone was going to ask for an inspection right now, because I heard you say, well, anyone could come proactively on their own right now. Would they have to pay for that? Would that be, just honestly want to know to make sure people are prepared the best way possible.
For a building inspection, yes, it would be just as it would happen after the registration process started. We don't do inspections at no cost. It's a fee-based service. And we already have a fee schedule that will easily accommodate short-term rentals.
So just to be clear right now, if someone had heard this and called up the fire department and said, hey, I'm really glad that you're doing these early inspections. Would you mind coming by to see, am I going to pass when I do the actual inspection? Because I had heard you said you'd come by a little sooner just in case. Would that also be considered paid inspection?
Fire? No, currently, no, we don't charge for inspection. Just permitting right now, so.
Okay, I was just wondering that, particularly if we had a lot of people saying, oh, great, I'm going to take advantage of getting this inspected, whether or not that would create a log jam. So that's just something I want to make sure that we keep our eye on in case it does.
And, if it requested through the building to have an inspection, as long as they're fine with it, I have no problem going along with the commissioner to just to assist and, give a set of eyes from the fire standpoint, so absolutely.
Okay.
We do a lot of joint inspections.
Yes.
And just to clarify, if someone requested inspection next week and you went out and inspected them, would you then re-inspect them prior to issuing a permit if you went out and inspected their short-term rental and there were no violations?
I wouldn't necessarily need, so if we're going back to the inclusion of a monitored fire alarm system, that requires a permit. But we can work out some of the details on that.
Yeah, it would be based on basically what we have now, but then we'd probably have to go back because we don't know it's going to be in the ordinance 2 and 4.
But we can find a lot of issues that could be corrected in the meantime. And we have plenty of time. I have plenty of time right now. So if somebody were to get in touch with me now, I could schedule something within the next couple of weeks, and that would, at their convenience. I know a lot of places are operating, but they have an off day, schedule it for that day. I'm happy to go do it. So
yeah, for instance, I could let them know what they need for extinguisher, right? Stuff, so they can prepare for that.
Yeah. So I want to make sure, Tamara, does that answer your question?
Yep. Thank you.
I just want to ask a follow-up question about the permit to install the wireless sprinkler. So when I spoke with
Fire alarm?
I'm sorry. At least I'm not saying sprinkler or sprinkling or whatever I said before. The smoke detector system, the wireless smoke detector, when I spoke to the person at ADT,
Yes.
he had said that they don't get permits. They just install them. So now you're saying that they have to have a permit to do that? Because they don't pull permits. They just
If it's a
install them.
required system and it has to meet UL standards, installation, NFPA standards, all of those things, it's a required system. See, earlier we talked about how, and I just learned this last week, definitively, and I looked it up in the code today, that such a system can be installed in lieu of the required hardwired smoke detection, CO detection system. So any system that's required, in this case, it would be required, requires a permit. That way, we then go out and do an inspection of that system and test it as well. So, yeah.
And we're
Again,
ensuring it's being installed by a licensed installer
Yes.
and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah, the permit would be applied through the portal for the building department. The building department would tag the fire department on it. So they would upload their specifications and what have you. I would look at that, check it off, and we'd go from there and then be all set. Once they get issued, they could install it.
Right.
Yeah.
So now in order to make this happen, we have to find out which companies do that because ADT is no longer in the business of doing permits. They just install them. So
Again, they can pull a permit if they have a system design professional associated with the business, which they have to have, even for a low voltage system. Such systems, they have to be licensed to operate the business. If they're installing a system that's required under code, they have to pull a permit. We're talking about a fire, if I want a burglar alarm system installed by ADT, permit's required because it's not a required system. It's an option.
Yeah.
Thanks. Would it be, just a question, the homeowner could pull the permit for it and then they could just do the install? Just as you would if you were doing construction in your house, the owner could pull their own permit.
It's a good question, but you would be, I don't know, I can look into that.
Because I think what Connie's talking about is when I talked to Joe, Joe's like, we don't wire anything in. We're not doing any wiring. We're not required to have a permit. So, but now we're gonna require a wireless system to have a permit. I mean, I understand you're gonna maybe ask him to pull it, but he'll be like, I don't wire anything in. Why would I pull it?
I might be able to.
I don't mind pulling a permit as a
required system. It's a required fire safety system. It's a required system in the house.
Yeah, so
Because, yeah,
I understand that, like, we're gonna require it, like the ordinance committee is gonna require it. And so then my question is, can I just pull, like, they can install it and I can pull the permit, you guys sign off on it and.
yeah, you'd have to supply plans. I mean, I'll see if there's anything in the way. No, you're right. So, so if you're the owner occupant of a 1 or 2 family dwelling, you can pull your own permit. You have the exemption in Massachusetts to a CSL, or things like that. So, yeah, you could do that, but you're talking about a house that you don't occupy.
Well, I think the reason I'm asking is because I've had multiple people in looking at my system and everybody said, you meet code, it's wired in, everything is fine. And then ADT is just gonna put them next to where they're already wired in smoke alarms. So I think my question is, how would I not? It just seems like I could pull a permit for that, right? Because it's already, I mean, I know that Captain Dan would look at it and he would tell me this is code or this isn't code, but I don't know. I can talk to Joe about it, but I'm not sure what he's gonna say. I'm trying to get ahead of the question, basically. Or the answer, get ahead of the answer.
I just have another question because you said you have a wired system.
I don't have a monitored system and I don't have a low voltage wired in system, but all of my smoke alarms are wired in to the house. So they're already wired in, so we're not taking those down. They're just putting them right next to every single one. So I'm gonna have like 10 alarms in my house. It's gonna be loud if it goes off. Let's put it that way. It's just a lot less expensive than a wired
Yes.
in low monitored system, low voltage monitored. So
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Um, Connie, when you spoke to ADT, the system that they said they don't get permits for, their system too?
Yeah, so I had a conversation, Mindy had the same conversation, and so he said that they installed this wireless smoke detector system, and that it is
Monitored by
monitored.
ADT,
Well,
but doesn't call the fire department.
that's the confusing part, and I don't want to get into it. He said it goes right into the fire department, but now I'm hearing it doesn't go into the fire department, so there's a little bit of mixed message there. So, but yes, it is monitored. I think
I think I can clarify why where confusion is. I think that they oftentimes don't get a permit because it's, try to imagine someone calling and just wanting to have a fire alarm in their house to prevent a fire, and they don't go through the full ropes. And or imagine someone who owns a restaurant and they just want to have it. I feel like there's times when ADT just does what we call it a hang and bang in the business, and they just go in rogue and they do it and they don't pull permits.
Sure, I was
Because
very
there's not class 2 wiring, right? Or I'm sorry, low voltage wiring, right? Which requires a permit.
Sure.
But they're saying we're not wiring anything.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that. I was very clear about what I was asking and also that it had to be monitored. So that's kind of what it was.
Yeah, and I guess my clarifying question, to Captain Constantine is the point of that permitting to make sure that it's a licensed professional doing the installation, or is it so you can go back and inspect? Because what I'm hearing is there might not be a lot of options in terms of vendors that also would go through the process of pulling a permit for an owner occupied house.
The permit is to ensure that the system is installed to code,
Okay.
to the proper code.
And do you feel like the fire department has the capability to do an inspection post installation that would make you feel comfortable to issue a license or issue a permit?
Absolutely, I do it all the time. All kinds of commercial systems, residential systems and stuff. So I just verify that they follow the plans, which were reviewed by myself and stuff, and saw that plans were the code, and then I go in to do actual physical testing the system or what have you, and making sure the placement's correct of everything to make sure it jives with the code and the plans, because sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it doesn't work properly, and they have to make adjustments and stuff, especially a lot of the commercial fire alarms. And that's why we do what's called a fire alarm acceptance test. We'll go in and have them ring through the whole system and test the whole system out to make sure it works initially. So yeah,
no, that's helpful. I guess, did you have any? Okay. I guess my follow-up question to that is that permit process through the same permit that would be requested from the building commissioner? Like, is that through the building permit process?
Through the building permit process. So the building, they would go through the portal, through the building department, and such, and the commissioner would see that it's fire alarm. He has to look at it. He'll check me off on it. I'll get an email and I'll go in and do the review and stuff of the system, make sure what it is, make sure it's got the UL approval and a PA and all that. The placement in the house is correct and everything and stuff. And then I'll go ahead and review it. And then he'll go ahead and issue the permit. And then they can do the work. And then they'll typically say, okay, the work's all done. We need you to come down and take a look at it and inspect it. And that's what we do. Make sure it works okay. Make sure the placement was to code and such. So to verify that. So bring it through, to the alarm company. It's got to, make sure it's coming in a to dispatch in a certain amount of time. and such. So we do all of that. Yeah, it's a lot of behind the scenes of the putting the fire alarm system in. So
Yeah, that's helpful. And I guess a question that is sort of to you now is, as part of that, if someone like Mindy, the only thing that they need to do is just add this system, this wireless system. They don't have any other renovation that they need to make, so they wouldn't be calling a contractor normally to pull a permit. And let's say in a situation like you had mentioned, there's a distinction between that law that allows homeowners to pull their own permits regarding owner occupancy. Would it be as simple as a non-owner occupied host just calling any licensed general contractor to pull that permit from you? Or would you allow a non-owner occupied short-term rental host to just pull the permit themselves? Or is that not up to you?
Yeah, some things there's discretion, some a lot of discretion, some zero discretion, and the CSL exemption is only extended to owner occupants of a 1 or 2 family dwelling. So, and I know people bring this up. It seems odd that fire safety systems have to get a building permit. And I just wanted to say something about that. The reason is because they're attached to the building. They become a permanent part of the building. So that's why, and there has been this kind of, since I've been doing this work, ongoing debate about and fear, I don't know why, that chapter 9 in the building code would, fire services is trying to take it from us. And I'm like, good riddance, that's fine. But until that changes, it's in the building code. So then the permitting is through the building. And as Dan already explained, essentially I was told in the very beginning, building permits for sprinkler systems, alarms, anything that's attached to the building, that's built into the building, the maintenance goes to fire. So that's why Dan will go out and do tests, do the acceptance testing and all that kind of stuff. But as weird as it is, and as uncomfortable as it is, sometimes it comes to the building department first as a permit. Now, on the question, see, I don't think it requires necessarily a CSL to install an alarm system. So the waiver or exception for a homeowner exemption for a CSL may not even apply here. But what I can do is look at the criteria around what license is required for a required wireless monitored residential fire alarm system. Because they're rarely used. Where they come into play most often is when you hit a limitation on wired smoke detectors, you have to go to the wireless systems, because they will allow the installation of many more devices. Imagine a mansion, you're kind of limited into how many smoke detectors and things can be formed by that system. So you have to go to something that allows the installation of many more things.
Okay.
That's all.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So, and just quickly, so if it did turn out that you needed to pull a permit and, the CSL exemption didn't apply, would my suggested remedy, you just call a licensed general contractor to pull the permit and just work that out with you? Is that an acceptable?
Is required, whatever licensee is required to install that system. That's what I need to know and really pin down, because we've heard ADT says it doesn't require a permit because we're not wiring anything. But this would be a required system. And if somebody who's not licensed to do it, no, I'm not saying you're not, Mindy, but you're not licensed, but you might do the research as a property owner and get all the devices UL listed, everything compatible so that everything works with the panel. And I believe you probably could do that. And that would be fine. A lot of people can put their mind to something like that and pull it off. But if it's not somebody, typically, if it's not somebody who does this kind of work routinely, then they're going to submit a plan that's going to fail. First of all, we have to take in plans, and it's a floor plan, and you're looking at where all the devices go, how many devices are actually on the system. In other words, we have to do a review of
I
that.
wasn't, let me just clarify, I wasn't suggesting that I was going to install the
Well,
system.
but I'm
I was
thinking you
just-
could.
I'm sure that I'm 100% positive I could.
I'd like to do as much as I can. I don't make anybody do anything they don't have to do.
Yeah, no, but I was saying like, I'm appreciative of Joe. He's talked to me on the phone 8 times. We've exchanged lots of emails. I'd like to hire him for the system. And so I will find out the answer if they're willing to pull the permit or not as ADT, for ADT to pull the permit. But when I talked to him, he was like, we don't wire anything. We don't pull permits. So I just need to see if he'll do that or not, or if I can just pull the permit, but they can install the system. That's really what I was asking.
Okay, the limited experience I've had with them, permits have been pulled.
Okay.
So that's all, and I might, and I'll look into it. I'll see what happens.
I'll call him. I have to return the detectors anyway, so.
Yeah.
I'll talk.
All
All
right.
right. Well, I mean, I think it's been like a little bit like playing whack-a-mole with like making sure that like we have a path forward and there isn't anything that's really gonna like throw people under the bus. But I feel like we've reached a point where we have next steps to massage the language, to really finalize what we want to include in the code, where we want to reference, or what we want to include the ordinance, where we want to reference the building code, and that stuff. Sounds like for hosts, they can start getting in contact with you guys, submitting plans, making sure that they have their ducks in order with what we've already established is acceptable. And it sounds like we can move forward with potentially setting a meeting in the second half of February to revisit that. Are the other counselors on the committee comfortable with that timeline?
Yes, I am.
All right. So I guess I will take a motion to continue this discussion at the next meeting in February.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Tamara?
Aye.
And I am aye. All right. And I don't think we have anything else on the agenda. Tamara, you said you have a hard stop at 6, so we'll coordinate the next meeting offline. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call. Tamara Smith.
Yes.
Madam? And aye. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.